So apparently some people bet on book prizes. And I thought it would be really interesting to look at the odds on which books will make the Booker Prize shortlist. Actually, these odds are about which book will win the Booker Prize, but we're going to use it to determine what will be the shortlist. Now, I was going to make this video a fortnight ago, and I didn't because, like, life and time and stuff. You know, I didn't get around to it, but the interesting thing is when I went to revisit this video, the odds had all changed. We've got completely different odds now. So I thought as part of this discussion, let's discuss how those odds have changed. I'm looking at these odds from a curiosity point of view, not as some sort of hot tip so that you can make a lot of money. If you take my advice and then bet money that you don't have on it, you are a full-blown idiot. I'm not mixing my words. Don't do that. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm an opinionated dickhead talking about books. Finally, I'm not reviewing the books here. I've already made that video. I'll put that link in the description if that is the video that you're hoping to watch with this one. So, the longest odds actually belong to two different books. That's 16-1. Misinterpretation by Lydia Shoga. That's moved out from about 10-1 a fortnight ago, and I don't think this is at all surprising. I've made no secret of my shock that this book was longlisted in the first place. I did a random wheel spinner video, and this book was predicted to make the shortlist by pure chance, and I sort of mocked the wheel spinner as being completely ridiculous and said how unlikely that was to be longlisted. And I've got a bit of egg on my face, but I still maintain that this book isn't really good enough to make a long list. However, even on this year's long list, which I think is the weakest I have ever read, this is a novel that is surpassed by other long-listed books. Other books on this long list are doing what this book is doing, playing around with the concept of character and narrator, and they're doing it so much better. I'd be really surprised to see this book go too much further in this competition. Universality by Natasha Brown was at 12-1 a fortnight ago, making it one of the longest odds then, and it's only gotten worse for her. Personally, there is no way I would predict Universality to make the shortlist, but I do think that these odds are a little too long for this novel. A lot of the narrative around Universality has been to say how much weaker it is than Brown's previous novel, Assembly, and I'll hold my hand up and say I am part of that narrative. But do previous works hold much weight when we're discussing book prizes? Perhaps Natasha Brown needs to talk to Margaret Atwood about that one. I think that the odds of this book are so long just because a lot of readers are disappointed, and rightfully so, about this book, and not because it's one of the worst two books on the long list. But on the other hand, we could say that maybe a fortnight ago it was a bit short because Brown is a big name author and a lot of people were giving her credit for her reputation, and now that they've read Universality, they don't think as much of its chances anymore. It's hard to tell. Overall, I'm not too shocked of where it is, but I would tweak it a little bit, really. Now, there are two books at 12-1 to win the prize. One Boat by Jonathan Buckley has come in from 14-1, and I think that's about right for this book. This is one of the two books that I couldn't finish from this year's long list, and I would say are probably the equal worst books long listed. But this book is a very typical book of this year's long list, and while I think there are some massive flaws in this novel, they are the kind of flaws that some readers will just overlook. They won't be big deals to some people while they're huge deals to other people. And that a book like this got long-listed in the first place means at least some of the judges are inclined to ignore those flaws and get behind this book. Nonetheless, it's a bit of a weak book, so I think that 14-1 is about right. Love Forms by Claire Adams has moved from 15-2 to 14-1. That is almost double the odds. Initially, when I saw that, I was a little shocked. And this has been one of the most popular novels on this year's long list, and it's definitely been one of my favourites. But it is stylistically very different from the other books on the long list. And while I think it is clearly one of the best 6 books on the long list, I think the qualities that the judges are looking for in a novel really don't match what this book is doing. So I do think there's some really good logic in why Love Forms is at such long odds. Still, if I was a betting man, and I'm not, this is somewhere I might put a couple of dollars. I think it represents a good chance to make money. There are 3 books at 10 to 1, which means these are the last 3 books that the bookies don't think will make the shortlist, or at least they don't think it's profitable to predict to make the shortlist. Similar to Love Forms, The South by Tash Orr was also at 15 to 2 a fortnight ago, which, by the way, for anybody who doesn't understand weird betting odds, that's basically the same as 7.5 to 1. So yeah, to go to 10 to 1 means it's gone out a little bit. I don't really see why, honestly. I think that this is a book that is really doing the things the judges are looking for. Again, I've made no secret in my reviews that I think that this is a weak novel. I think it's a bit of a poor book, but it fits nicely with the books on this year's long list. So I wouldn't be surprised if it were shortlisted. Then again, it's one of those books that I wouldn't be surprised if it were to miss out too. It's really on the cusp of the shortlist in my mind, and I think the odds do reflect that. Flashlight by Susan Cho was at 13 to 2, meaning it has really dropped off. I do wonder if it's because this is a novel that starts off really strong, but the more you read of it, the worse it gets. It just sort of keeps going and going. I think a lot of the early bets on what would make the book a shortlist would be from people who haven't had a chance to read all of the books. So maybe they've only just read a chapter or a few pages, and they might think that this book has a lot more quality than it does and not appreciate just how monotonous it is. Still, I think that 10 to 1, that's probably about right, again, placing it on the cusp of the the cusp of the shortlist and just missing out. Auditions by Katie Kitamura has come in a little bit. Previously, it was way out at 12 to 1, and I still think that those odds are a lot too long. This is a potential winner right here, and one that I would be very, very surprised if it were to miss the shortlist. When I covered Love Forms, I said that it was one of 2 places that I think represented an opportunity to make some money, and I think that this is the other one here. I think that this is the book that the bookies have wrong by the largest amount. Kitamura's novel is really unique, and that might make it too weird for all of the judges, but it's a book where you simply cannot say another novel is doing what Auditions is doing, but better than it. There's nothing doing what Auditions is doing. Now, personally, I wouldn't have Kitamura's novel as the favourite to win, but I would expect it to be very active in the pointy end of the discussions with the judges. Now, moving on to the books that the bookies think will make the shortlist, there are 2 books at 8 to 1. The Rest of Our Lives by Ben Markovitz. That was at 9 to 1 a fortnight ago, which means it's hardly changed at all. But by virtue of other books moving odds, it's moved from the 9th favourite to win to equal 5th. And look, let me be really honest here. There are books that I don't really like on this year's long list. I'm making no secrets about that. But a lot of these books I can really understand the rationale behind the judges' thinking. But not this book. I would personally have this at the longest odds to make the shortlist or to win the prize. But that is with the caveat of I honestly don't understand what the judges were thinking when they listed this novel in the first place. Maybe one could argue that it's doing similar things to Flesh, which I think is clearly a better book. But I guess that all says that I'd be very surprised if this were shortlisted. This novel, I think, is clearly the darling of one of the judges. Hopefully the rest will overrule him when they decide on the shortlist. And no, I am not misgendering 3 of the judges on the panel right now. Flesh by David Sasley was at 5 to 1, so it has moved out quite a bit to be at 8 to 1 now. I can't see this winning, so I think the odds are moving in the correct direction, but I mean, I would tweak them and move them a little bit further personally. However, that said, I think that this is one of the best 6 books on this year's long list. But what it is doing, I think, is well and truly eclipsed by both Auditions and Sea Scraper. It is not doing the same as either of those books, but you can sort of see little pieces from either of them, and it's just not as good as either of those books. So 4 books to go. We can call these 4 books the favourite, and of the 4 that are left, 3 of them have the same odds, 4-1. The Land in Winter by Andrew Miller has moved in slightly from 5-1 a fortnight ago, and look, I don't get the love for this book. I don't think it's very good at all, but a lot of you disagree with me, and I respect your opinions on that. I think it's wonderful that there are books that I don't like out there that other people get a lot of joy out of reading. It makes me, and I think it should make everybody, appreciate all the different reasons that we enjoy books and how we look for different things and appreciate different things within a novel. And The Land in Winter has got an incredible amount of love, and it has already won the Walter Scott Prize, something that you don't do if you are as bad a book as I claim it to be. So would I be surprised if this book was shortlisted? Not in the slightest. Would I be surprised if this book won the Booker Prize? I think I would be confused, but I wouldn't be surprised. If it does win, I will be watching and rewatching a few reviews from the booktubers who love this one, so I can figure out why they appreciate it so much and maybe what I didn't care for or what I missed or whatever. I think that having this as one of the favourites is right. I think that this is definitely something that you should consider if you were going to predict a winner. That said, I mean, I don't know about the numbers, but I think I would probably have this as the 4th favourite behind the next 3 books that I'm about to mention, but I get the bookies placing it here. The Loneliness of Sonia and Sunny by Kieran Desai has moved from 5-2 to 4-1, which is moving out a little bit. Now, I've not read this novel yet as it hasn't been released, so I have very little to say about where I see the qualities of this book and how I think that is reflected in the odds. But Desai has won the Booker Prize before, and I think that's both going to keep her odds very short and keep her in contention until the very end of this prize. But I will say it again, Booker Prize, if you're watching, please change your eligibility dates or change the dates that you release your long and your short list so that us readers can read along with the prize. It's just rude that you don't. It's inconsiderate. And if the point of the prize is to promote books, I tell you, it's a lot better promoting books that people can buy than books that people can't. The final book at 4-1 is Sea Scraper by Benjamin Wood. And it's had the exact same change in odds as the Desai novel, moving from 5-2 to 4-1. I absolutely agree that this book is a potential winner. And look, I would like to see the odds of this book winning even shorter, but that's only because I can see that there is a chasm of difference between the books on this year's long list that I enjoyed and the ones that I did not. So maybe that's my bias coming in. It's definitely my bias. No maybe about it. I don't know if I would be surprised if this book didn't make the shortlist, however, but I do know that I would be really upset if it didn't. I think it has so much quality. And for me, I hope when the judges are picking their winner, they are discussing Sea Scraper and they are discussing it in conjunction with the next book that I am about to name. Endlings by Maria Riva has come in from 3-1 to 5-2, making it the outright favourite to win this prize. And I've got to say, that seems correct to me. There are so many novels that are experimenting with their characters on this year's long list, and Endlings is no exception to that. But it is a glorious, weird and wild ride of a novel that is fun, but it's also deep and thought-provoking and manages to create really good, solid characters, while at the same time question how characters should be drawn in books. I think my bugbear with this year's long list is that there are experimental novels where the experiment makes the act of reading the book less enjoyable, while Endling is the exact opposite. It's a good book already, but the experimentation actually brings out the joy in reading it. And it is a novel that is really balanced between the traditional values of a book and really advocating for how things might change and evolve over the next few years and looking towards that bookish future. And I think that's why I completely agree with it being the favourite. That's why it's my personal pick, because it's a book that's celebrating our literary past, all of the influences that it has on there, while experimenting and looking at the future. So just to very briefly recap, if you are looking to bet, don't. But with that said, I think auditions should be a lot shorter, while love forms should be a little bit shorter. That's sort of where the disparities are. The rest of our lives should be much longer, and the rest of the books, I might tweak them a little bit, but largely I think the bookies have got it right. I definitely think that their 4 favourites probably are the right 4 to have as the favourites. But let me know what you think. Where do you think these odds are incorrect? Where do you think, what do you think needs to be changed around? Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And just a big shout out to say thank you to all of my wonderful patrons. Bye bye.